It's another beautiful Sunday afternoon. This is Robin Minds. Welcome. My name is Ebuka Obi Uchendu. Thanks a lot for joining us. We're here to start the show talking about something that Nigerians are really burdened about, but doesn't seem to get a lot of talk time. We're talking housing and its many issues and problems that we face as citizens. I'm going to be joined by two people who know a lot better than I do how we are where we are and hopefully what we should be thinking about going forward. I'm joined now by Akinyo Patola, who's an estate surveyor and valuer, and Koko Aneto Soke, who's a new media consultant. Thanks a lot for joining us today. Let me start with you, Akin. Akin, we've heard so many policies. I think that's one thing Nigeria is great at, putting out policies. A lot of them great a lot of the times, and housing isn't left out in that. But we don't seem to see the end result of this. I think it was in 2018 we did hear government talk about 300,000 new low-income housing units for Nigerians. I don't know what the situation of that is now. Why does it seem like government doesn't seem very intentional with executing or at least providing public housing for Nigerians?
Thank you very much. So the reality is this: it's a major and global challenge. It's not only in Nigeria that you have housing shortages. I think from the last count, depending on which statistics you look at, some people will claim 17 million, some will claim 20 million. So with those challenges, there are huge opportunities. I was just thinking to myself the other day while I was reading a book that, look, housing, whether affordable or not, is not just the role of government. There are individuals, the communities, the private sector also have to come to play. So it's huge. Government is playing their part. Private individuals also have to play their part, but everybody needs to come together to be able to solve the huge deficit that we currently have in the country.
I want to talk about pricing now, and I think it's something a lot of Nigerians are very interested in, especially this is one of those places where nothing ever comes down when it goes up. And in the last 2 years at least, it looks like things have gotten even crazier. At a time when the rest of the world seems to be, taking a dip, especially with what the lockdown and COVID did to people, we saw a lot of countries where even rent was put on hold, housing pricing was, reduced to certain levels so that people could at least be able to live. We haven't seen that here in Nigeria. Why does housing pricing, or the pricing of houses in Nigeria, why do market forces never seem to affect it?
So, if I need to be brutally honest, one of the factors will be corruption. You see it in other climates, especially in Europe, places in Asia, where you don't use ill-gotten funds. And this is me being direct, where you don't use ill-gotten funds to develop housing stock. You would notice that the real estate mirrors the economy. So as the economy is dipping, as you're reaching a recession, depending on which economic cycle you're in, it will reflect on the housing rates. And you will see investors, you see private individuals getting concerned. Nobody wants to have a void. Nobody wants to have vacancies. So gradually, the rental prices or sales prices begin to dip gradually. But in a lot of these countries where corruption is high, people don't care. The property is there. They tell you that, hey, look, the property is not drinking water. It's not disturbing anybody. They leave it. They tag it really at the high end of the market, the high rent, and they're not bothered about it dipping anyway because they're not bothered. The funds are not, they didn't work hard for those funds any which way. So I would like to answer it in that way. Last year, yes, we saw the pandemic. In some places, I can categorically say that yes, rents did drop in some parts of Lagos, where I can speak confidently. In some other parts too, it didn't drop, but that could be easily attributed to demand. Where demand is high, definitely just like the law of demand and supply, where demand is high, the rents would be high, especially where supply doesn't match the demand.
Okay, let me come to you now, Coco. You've recently moved from Lagos to Abuja. What was your experience like, especially considering the two cities? These are the two major urban cities in Nigeria. Maybe putting it in context, comparing both, as well as moving there. How was it for you?
Essentially moved back to my family house in Abuja because I couldn't get a place to rent in Lagos, and I had overstayed my rent by a month. And like you said, it was at the height of the pandemic, and I had been trying to find a place to stay. I was going to use one of those platforms that let you pay monthly, because for me as a person, the most difficult thing about house hunting in Lagos is I'm a freelancer. And as much as I try to save, I have other obligations family-wise, and I never have that money in bulk. You're trying to rent a place that's comfortable in a decent area, and you're seeing a certain amount of rent, like 1 million upwards. And it was a bit difficult for me to have that amount of money to pay in bulk. And so I would always look for a situation where I could pay on a monthly basis. So I was trying to use one of those platforms that let you pay monthly, which was easier for me. But unfortunately, the place I wanted to get was taken by someone else before I could pay for it. And then I was looking at other options, and I remember seeing a place a week before that was a certain price. And at the time when I was ready to go and see the place and pay for it, the price had gone up almost double. So I was just like, okay, I'm moving back home.
This seems to be the story of a lot of Nigerians, especially young Nigerians, moving out and moving back home because they can keep up with this payment of rent. So Coco, still with you. When you have these conversations with agents or landlords, there's even a law, at least in Lagos, about not collecting 2 years worth of rent, for example. There are certain parts of Lagos where you can pay monthly.
So that law essentially exists wherever the law is written. It's definitely not a reality. I can't remember a single place that I tried to rent where I wasn't asked to pay at least a year and a half in advance. And a year and a half is with begging, like, please, this is what I have. Let me pay this.
Akin, this looks like something I need to come back to you with now, because like she said, a lot of places around the world, it's what happens. You pay monthly. In Nigeria, I was seeing, I think it was the Lagos State governor back in the day, Tunde Fashola, who had put out this policy, about reviewing the frequency of rent collection or the tenor or whatever it is. Why is that not a thing here, and why is enforcing so hard?
Okay, good. So one reason is because of the huge capital outlay to develop properties. 80%, some will even say 90% of construction cost materials are imported. We know what the exchange rate is saying at the moment. It is staggering. So most investors, developers, property owners want to recoup as fast as possible, getting loans, getting facilities to build in this part of the world is tough with the double-digit interest rates. So in reality, I don't see it happening anytime soon. But, and I put this caveat, a lot of things are changing. And I was trying to share with Coco that, look, these days, people have one-on-one conversations with agents, brokers, and even landlords. I say, hey, look, I've seen your property. I like it. I've gotten the offer letter. I know you're asking for 1 year rent, so I don't have it. I just honestly don't have it. Can I pay you quarterly in advance? Can I pay you half yearly? We've seen those conversations, especially within the last 2-3 years. It is quite popular now. But it comes on a one-on-one basis. You've seen landlords being more realistic with their own expectations. Yeah.
You've mentioned something I'm very interested in, which is the construction pricing. A place like the United States, which is literally the #1 country in the world, there's a lot less emphasis on cement, for example, and you get a lot of prefabrication that goes on. I don't know if that's cheaper, but it does seem like it is. Why are we so reliant on concrete, for example, if you're saying that that's probably why housing is priced the way it is? Is there a climate issue with the way our temperature here is, why we can't use other material to build that's probably cheaper?
I wouldn't say it's a climate issue. It is getting more and more prevalent. I've seen a lot of construction companies coming from India, even from the United States, with this new housing concepts. Eventually, yes, in terms of cost, it still tends to be quite expensive because of the value chain. That's one. Two, we also have this building with compressed earth, which is also popular, but it's simply fad. It's just fashion. Most people, they don't want to accept it, even when they know that, look, you can achieve your home ownership dream at a fraction of the cost. And we need to hear feedback like, I don't want to build with mud or with earth or with container type structures. What will my friends say? What will people say? That's just it. Because we've seen models. They are fantastic. In fact, there are a couple of even hotels and high-rise buildings that use this concept, and they're amazing. And at the end of the day, when they are finished, wow, you won't be able to tell the difference. But yes, cost is still a major issue.
Coco, a lot of young people have been accused of, complaining about the wrong things because we want to live in certain areas. So you want to live in Lagos, but you want to live in a certain area just for whatever reason. Like I've said a lot of places around the world, people don't necessarily live in the cities. You live in suburbs or you have a commute to work and go back home because you're trying to get better or cheaper housing. In places like Abuja, there's a lot of estates away from the city. But most people don't want to live in those places because they don't want to drive for 30 minutes to an hour to get to work and come back, as is the norm everywhere else in the world. Do you think that's a part of the problem where there's housing, but people want to live in certain areas and, complain about the wrong things?
If that's okay, I'm going to speak as someone who has lived in Lagos in both suburb kind of area and in the main city, and then in Abuja as well, mostly from my experience, from hearing from other people. So in Lagos, I've lived at Iyanpaja, not Iyanpaja exactly, but like Mangoro, which is pretty close, at Lekki. So it's not a situation, I don't think it's a situation of people not wanting to live outside the city. It's the fact that, like I said, you're trying to get a place to live. At the end of the day, you want something that is livable, right? And affordable for you as a person, regardless of your commute. For some people, yes, they do not want to make that sacrifice, which is understandable in my own opinion, especially in a city like Lagos, where I would, living in Mangoro, I would have to come out of my house at 4 a.m. or 4:30 a.m. every day to get a bus. I don't drive. I would have to get a bus to Yaba or to Oshodi, because if by 5 o'clock that bus was 300 naira, if I come out at 7, that bus is 600 naira. I knew what times the bus would leave from Lekki, from Obalende, from even VI to Iyanipaja to get me home. I knew the last times the bus would stop, most time 8 p.m., 9 p.m., just to get the cheapest fare home, right? And those are sacrifices a lot of people make. I wasn't the only one living where I was living. I knew a lot of people either making the commute from Aja to Yaba, and it's mostly because of the same thing. Where I was living in Mangoro, it was affordable for me at that time. That was what I could afford. And out of all the options, it was the most livable. And honestly, it was nothing to write home about. It was 4 steps from one wall to the other where I was living. It was a room that was 4 steps from one wall to the other. And I paid almost 250,000 for that space. In Abuja, it's not even an issue. Commuting in Abuja, I don't really think there's much of a commute in the FCT unless you live in like Kebbi or like Suleja. So those are people coming from outside Abuja. I don't know of anyone in particular who does that because they can't find a place in Abuja to stay. Housing in Abuja, while it does seem more expensive, in my opinion, it's a lot easier, to be honest, because like you said, there are lots of estates in the non-city center areas like Katampe, Gwarinpa, even what's that area called? There are lots of estates, and they're really good. Like, I've been to some of those houses and I'm like, fam, if I was ready to move out of my family house, I would move there, right? And they're pretty affordable. You can get like a 2-bedroom for like 2.5, 3 million. You can even get cheaper if you're willing to look. I know someone who just got a 3-bedroom around Katampe for like 2 million. And that he even bargained and was like, oh, so, I'll pay this now. I think they wanted him to pay like 3 million, but he was like, I'm still going to refurbish, I'm going to paint, bring in furniture. So they were able to give it to him at 2 million minus all the agent's fees and all that. So it's relatively easier to find housing here. Moving from even Kubwa to Abuja, to like my town or somewhere, it's like 30, 45 minutes. And as someone who has lived in Lagos, that's not much of a commute. And I find that in Abuja, people are a lot more willing to like share their space. In Lagos, I will often try to find someone who I could be like, can I rent a room in your apartment and pay you monthly? And not a lot of people are willing to do that. In Abuja, more people are willing to do that with their friends. A lot of people just come together and rent a place together, or people are like, oh, I'm looking for someone to share. Do you know anyone who wants to share? And moving together, because it's a lot easier to split the rent. And I think maybe just in general, people are more trusting, I guess, is a way to look at it. But I don't think accusing people of wanting to live in the city is a very viable excuse for the ridiculous situation of finding a house.
To take it on a wider context and as quickly as you can, just answer this. Coco, still with you. Do you think this is a Lagos, Abuja, maybe Port Harcourt problem? And there's probably affordable housing in a lot more of the other 34 states we have in this country. Are we just trying to concentrate too much on these cities with the problems?
I don't know what housing in other cities is like, but I will agree that a lot of people are focusing on living in Abuja, Lagos, Port Harcourt, and other major cities. I don't know what the housing situation in other cities is like.
Okay, let me close this out with you, Akin, very quickly now. Very, very, very fascinated for years now by Singapore. I think they have something around 90% of their citizens who own their homes. It's probably, I think, the highest in the world. I've been there, I've seen public housing there, stories and stories and stories of, apartments when you drive around the country. Obviously, from a deliberate policy from government, I think it started around the 60s or 70s to make sure that Singaporeans could own their homes, whether it's a 1 or 2 or 3 bed. And it has worked out for them. We have a state, for example, like Lagos, which is the smallest state in this country, but you can hardly find any high-rise buildings to start with. So are we not doing the wrong things, and what can we learn from a country like Singapore?
So I think we can learn a whole lot. But I would, my take would be a little bit different. Yes, we can pick a couple of things from Singapore and build vertically, but, it's one thing to own a property, it's another thing to maintain it. So maintenance is a huge issue in Nigeria. Yes, we're getting better with the prevalence of property managers and facility managers, but it's huge. And it will be another challenge. So it's, you're creating one, you're solving one problem to create another. Let me also mention that, yes, home ownership in Nigeria, I was looking at some statistics. We have less than 25%. We have less than 500,000 mortgages too. Nationwide, which is abysmally low. Even a country like Accra, Ghana, they are closer to or nearing 50%. So there's a whole lot, but I think we are also making gradual steps. The challenges are huge. With challenges come opportunities. About 2-3 years ago, I think the current CBN governor also brought out some policies. They were giving incentives to banks, commercial banks, to give out mortgages so that we can increase home ownership rates in Nigeria. I did banking for about 10, 11 years. first-hand information from a lot of my friends, colleagues who are still in banking. They use that opportunity to get their own homes. Even some of my friends too that are not in banking, based on those CBN policies too, they were able to put funds together and gradually started the process of home ownership. It's tough. I wouldn't say it's something that these rates will grow overnight, but gradually, I'm sure we'll get there.
Well, thank you very much, Akin. Thank you very much, Coco. Looking forward to better days ahead. I don't know how soon those will be, but Coco, all the best. Hopefully you get some better housing in the near future.
I'm very okay at home for now.
Okay, as long as you're happy. Thank you very much. We're going to take a break now and come back. Please don't go away.